Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we dive into some really fascinating, sometimes complex research, and we pull out the absolute core ideas to share with you. Our goal is to give you that shortcut to being, really well informed. And today, we are tackling a concept that is, well, it's so fundamental, it almost feels radical. The idea is that the words you speak every single day aren't just describing your life, they are literally building it.
That really is the core claim, and it's a bold one. Just think about it for a second. Think about the energy in a room when someone walks in and says, well, this always happens to me.
Right, you can feel the air just go out of the balloon.
It's immediate versus the person who says, okay, this is a challenge, but I know there's a solution here. One of those sentences just drains all the potential out of the moment, and the other one, it actually creates it.
So that casual stream of words, the stuff you mutter under your breath or say to a friend, our source material today argues that's the blueprint. It's the architecture for your health, your bank account, your relationships. This is way beyond, hanging there posters.
Oh, absolutely. The sources we're pulling from today, they're a mix of research on linguistic power, a lot on neuroplasticity, and habit formation. And our mission for you, the listener, is really clear. We want to show you how your language can shift from just being descriptive.
Just reporting on what's already happened.
Exactly. From just reporting on the past to being actively generative to literally building the future you want. So this isn't think positive. This is much more like disciplined neural engineering.
I find it so interesting that the author of our main source started this journey from a place of, realizing her own self-sabotage.
Completely. She talks about spending years just peppering her speech with these little throwaway phrases, things like, oh, I'll never get ahead, or I'm just terrible with technology.
Things we all say.
We all say them. She thought it was just conversational filler, a way to be relatable or modest, but they were anything but harmless.
So what was the turning point for her?
It was a pretty intense challenge from a mentor. The mentor told her to record everything, and I mean everything, she said for 72 straight hours.
Wow. Every conversation.
Every conversation, every phone call, every time she talked to herself walking down the street, and then she had to transcribe it.
I can't even imagine what that would be like, to see your own words laid out like that.
Well, she said it was absolutely sobering, just brutal. She saw, in black and white, this constant low-grade drip, a drip of doubt, of scarcity, of just resignation.
So she was constantly arguing for her own limitations.
All day, every day. She was her own biggest saboteur. And that moment, that really harsh moment of clarity, that's the starting line. That's where this work begins. You have to become aware of the architecture you're currently building before you can even think about renovating.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's get into this core thesis. Words as reality architects.
Right. So the first big idea from the sources is that words aren't just, harmless puffs of air. They're declarations. They are literal instructions that steer your brain's GPS. Your brain hears them and goes, okay, destination noted.
I love the analogy they use for this. It really helped me get my head around it. They say, to imagine your life's results, your job, your health, your savings account, as this beautiful building, a cathedral, maybe.
The part everyone sees from the outside.
Exactly. But what's holding it all up, what's keeping it from collapsing, it's this invisible skeleton of steel beams and concrete foundations. And that entire hidden structure, it's made of words.
And that's the whole point. If those beams are made of phrases like, I'm not good enough, or things never work out for me, then the whole structure is compromised. The visible part of your life, the outcome, will eventually, inevitably, show those cracks.
Because action follows language. That's another key point, right?
It's the child of language. That's the phrase they use. And it's so true. You simply cannot consistently act in a way that is contrary to the declarations you keep repeating. It creates too much cognitive dissonance.
So if my internal mantra is, I never have enough money, my brain basically gets that memo, gets that instruction.
It does. And it will start to subconsciously filter your reality to match that instruction. It'll make you overlook a small investment opportunity, or it'll nudge you towards an impulse purchase. Why? Because those actions help maintain the integrity of your core belief. I never have enough money. The brain craves consistency, even if it's a negative consistency.
So it's actively working to prove your negative beliefs right.
It's a loyalty to the script you've given it, but the good news is it's just as loyal to a positive script. If you repeatedly declare, I am a resourceful problem solver, Your brain's reticular activating system starts scanning the environment for solutions, not for problems. It's just following orders.
The story of the two sprinters, Marcus and Diego, really brings this home. It's such a stark contrast.
It really is, because on paper, they were identical. Same height, same muscle mass, same elite coaching staff, same punishing training schedule. Everything was the same.
Except for the results. One of them just kept getting better, and the other one plateaued. Hard.
And the only measurable difference was their language, their self-talk. Marcus. He approached every single workout as a data-gathering mission. If he failed a lift, it wasn't a failure, it was information.
They were feedback.
It was pure feedback. He'd mutter to himself, okay, body, noted, let's adjust. Before a big sprint, he'd be saying, watch me fly today. This is the one. He was priming his entire nervous system for success.
And Diego.
Diego was a different story entirely. He'd walk onto the track, already defeated by his own vocabulary. You'd hear him groaning, I'm so exhausted, or these workouts are killing me. I just can't keep up with Marcus.
And that's not just, venting. That has a real biological effect.
Of a profound one. Marcus's brain, hearing those positive commands, was releasing dopamine and adrenaline. It was preparing his muscles for explosive action and quick recovery. It was a performance-enhancing cocktail he was mixing himself.
Whereas Diego was basically injecting himself with a sedative.
That's not an exaggeration. His constant declarations of exhaustion and pain were triggering a flood of cortisol, the stress hormone. And cortisol's job is to prepare the body for a threat, which means conserving energy, slowing things down, preparing to retreat. His body was chemically obeying his commands to fail.
So his language was creating this self-inflicted chemical sabotage loop. He was literally drugging himself into a plateau.
He was. And that brings us to the really tricky part, the next layer, which is learning to spot this hidden language of self-sabotage in ourselves.
Because it's sneaky. It doesn't show up wearing a sign that says, I'm a negative belief.
Never. It hides in plain sight. It disguises itself as something socially acceptable. It sounds like humor, especially self-deprecating humor. It sounds like modesty. And the most dangerous one of all, it sounds like just being realistic.
This is where I think everyone listening needs to lean in, because we all do this, these little micro phrases, as the source calls them.
And they are so powerful because they're on a loop, they're repetitive, and they're usually tied to an emotion. Think of a phrase like, I'm just not good with money.
I hear that one all the time.
It's not a description of your past performance. It's a definitive statement of identity. It's a permission slip you're writing for your brain to just check out when it comes to financial literacy.
Or, I'm terrible at remembering names. You say that as you're meeting someone new.
And you've just guaranteed you won't remember their name. You've given your prefrontal cortex the direct command. This data is not important. You can discard it. And then there's the big one, the universal one. With my luck, something will probably go wrong.
Which is basically casting a spell. You're telling your brain to be on high alert for failure.
You're activating your threat detection system. You're foreshadowing failure, so your brain starts working to make that story come true. And the more we repeat these, the deeper we get into what the sources call the neuroplastic trap.
Let's talk about the physicality of that. It's not just a concept, right? This is a physical thing happening in our brains.
It is absolutely physical. Every time you think a thought or speak a phrase, a specific set of neurons fire. When you repeat that phrase, those same neurons fire again and again and again.
And that strengthens the connection.
It's like walking the same path through a field of tall grass. The first time, it's hard. But after 100 times, you've worn a clear path. After 1,000 times, you've worn a deep rut in the dirt.
So the brain just defaults to that path.
Because it's metabolically efficient. The brain is always looking to conserve energy, so it will always choose the widest, deepest, most well-established neural pathway. It will take the rut even if there is a beautiful paved highway right next to it, simply because the rut is the familiar default route.
That explains so much. It explains why changing a habit, a thought pattern, feels so hard. It's not just a lack of willpower. You're physically fighting against the inertia of that neural rut.
You are literally expending more metabolic energy to blaze a new trail. It takes conscious, focused effort. And this sabotage, this rut following, it shows up so clearly in our professional lives. It creates what the source calls the linguistic glass ceiling.
These are the phrases that sound so polite, but they're just gutting your own authority.
Exactly. The little prefaces we use, this is probably a stupid idea, but Or, I might be wrong here, but, or the classic, I'm no expert, but.
You've already discounted your idea before you've even said it.
You've sent a clear signal to everyone in the room. You don't need to take this seriously. My contribution is disposable. You are literally building a glass ceiling over your own head with your own words. Why would anyone promote you or invest in your idea when you are constantly devaluing it yourself?
The story of Lily the entrepreneur is a perfect example of this in action. She had a great product, the data was solid.
Fantastic product, eco-friendly, huge market potential. Investors in the meetings would nod along, they'd say they love the concept, and then they'd politely pass. Every single time.
And the problem wasn't in her slide deck.
Not at all. The problem was in her internal monologue right before she walked into the room. She admitted later that her pre-meeting mantra, the thing she'd muttered to herself in the elevator, was always, please don't screw this up. Please, please, please don't let me mess this up.
So she was walking in radiating anxiety.
She was radiating fear of failure. And that leaks out. It's nonverbal. Her posture was probably a little more closed, her eye contact a little less steady, her vocal tone a little higher. She was communicating a desperate need for their approval, not a confident offer of a partnership. She looked like a high-risk investment.
Regardless of what the numbers on the page said.
Exactly. The only thing that changed was her self-spoken prelude. Her coach had to replace that desperate plea with a firm, grounded declaration. She had to repeat, I am the ideal partner for smart capital. My product solves a massive problem.
And what happened?
Her whole physiology changed. She said she felt her shoulders go back, her breathing deepened. She walked into the 7th pitch meeting with a totally different energy. She was grounded, she was confident. The pitch itself was identical, but the person delivering it was transformed. And that was the meeting where she got her funding.
It's so important to draw the line here, as the sources do, between that kind of sabotage, that false humility, and true humility.
It's a critical distinction. False humility is using self-deprecating language as a defense mechanism to preempt criticism. It's a strategy of shrinking. True humility is something else entirely. It's a grounded, honest assessment of reality. It's saying, I have a lot to learn and I'm eager to learn it. It acknowledges truth without denying possibility, and the language you choose determines which one you're practicing.
Okay, so that's the framework. It's compelling, but let's get into the science. Let's move from the anecdotes to the biology. What is actually happening inside our heads when we do this?
All right, this is where it gets really fascinating. We need to understand that we have a brain that is constantly listening to itself. It's its own most captive audience.
So when I say something out loud...
When you say, for example, I'm always so disorganized, the sound waves hit your auditory cortex, just like my voice is hitting it now. But then a special circuit kicks in, the self-referential network. Your prefrontal cortex basically flags that incoming data and says, hold on, the source of this information is self. This is high priority intel.
So my brain doesn't treat my own voice like background noise. It actually puts it at the front of the line.
It gives it a VIP pass. And then the hippocampus, which is sort of the brain's librarian and memory center, gets to work. It starts cataloging that statement. Subject identifies as disorganized, filing this under core beliefs.
And this is neuroplasticity in real time.
This is it. This is Hebb's rule in action. Neurons that fire together, wire together. The more times you say, I'm disorganized, the more times that specific neural circuit fires. And every time it fires, the connection gets a little stronger, a little faster, a little more coated in myelin, which is the brain's insulation. You're literally building a wider, faster superhighway for that negative thought.
And we have physical proof of this, right? The Stanford MRI study.
We do. This was a game changer. They put people in an fMRI machine and had them read different kinds of statements about themselves.
Yeah.
And they watched what their brains did in real time.
So what happened when they read positive, affirming statements?
When they read things like, I am capable of learning new things, or I am resilient in the face of challenges, you could see the motivation centers of the brain just light up. The ventral striatum, the part associated with pleasure and reward, became highly active. The brain was basically getting itself coached into a state of readiness and optimism.
Okay, and the flip side.
Yeah.
When they read the negative stuff.
The contrast was, frankly, alarming. When they read phrases like, I am doomed to fail, or I'm not smart enough for this, not only did the motivation centers go dim,
Which you'd expect.
but what was shocking was that other areas started to light up. Specifically, the anterior cingulate cortex. This is a part of the brain that processes the emotional component of physical pain.
Wait, say that again. The brain reacts to a negative sentence as if it's a physical injury.
That's what the data suggests. The brain doesn't seem to make a huge distinction between a cutting remark from yourself and, say, stubbing your toe. It registers both as a threat, as a source of pain that needs to be managed. It triggers a defensive, protective response.
That is incredible. It really reframes the whole idea of being hard on yourself. You're not just being tough, you're inflicting a low-grade chronic injury on your own nervous system.
1,000 tiny paper cuts every day. And that damage then needs to be translated into behavior. There's a bridge between the language and the action.
So how does that connection work? How do the words in my head get my body to do something or not do something?
It's about the connection between the language centers, Broca's area for speech production, Wernicke's for comprehension, and the motor systems. When you make a verbal claim of capability, when you say out loud, "I'm a disciplined professional," that signal doesn't just stay in the language part of the brain. It travels to the dorsal striatum. And this area is all about habit formation, procedural memory, and goal-directed action.
So it's like the brain's project manager. It gets the memo, new identity, disciplined professional, and it asks, okay, what's the action plan?
Precisely. It starts mapping out the micro-behaviors. How does a disciplined professional sit at their desk? How do they manage their email? How do they prepare for a meeting? Your body starts to subconsciously align its posture, its focus, its movements to match the identity you've declared. The words are the code that programs the physical output.
And this is all happening underneath the surface, mediated by a chemical cocktail that we're mixing with our words.
It's all chemistry. When you speak in terms of defeat or resignation, this is pointless, I can't do this, you are literally bathing your brain in cortisol. And we know what cortisol does. It makes you anxious, it fogs your memory, and it dramatically narrows your creative thinking. It puts you in fight or flight mode where the only options are to attack or run away.
Not a great state for solving complex problems.
The worst possible state. But when you switch to affirmative, resilient language, I can figure this out, there's a way through this, you flip the chemical switch, you start releasing dopamine.
The motivation molecule.
The motivation and reward molecule. It makes you want to persist. You also get a dose of endorphins, which helps you manage discomfort and stay focused. You are literally your own internal pharmacy, and your words are writing the prescriptions, drip feeding yourself either medicine or poison with every single sentence.
This brings up the nocebo effect, which is it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
We all know about the placebo effect, but this is its dark twin.
It is, and it's some of the most powerful evidence we have. The nocebo effect shows that just the verbal prediction of a harmful outcome can create real, measurable physical symptoms.
So you tell someone a simple sugar pill might give them a headache.
And a significant percentage of them will develop a headache. Their heart rate might change, they might feel nauseous. Their body physically manifests the symptom based purely on the linguistic suggestion.
So if a doctor's words can do that to me, what on earth can my own voice, the one that has ultimate authority in my head, do to me every single day?
It creates a self-inflicted nocebo effect. If you're constantly telling yourself, this stress is going to make me sick, you are directing your body to manifest the physiology of sickness. The brain hears the prediction of harm and starts to enact the experience of harm as a defense mechanism.
And the research goes even deeper than that, right? It's not just about stress. It connects our words to our genes.
This is where we get into the really cutting-edge science of epigenetics. The big discovery here is that our genes aren't our destiny. They're more like a massive switchboard. And our environment, our experiences, they flip those switches on and off.
And our language is a key part of that environment.
A hugely powerful part. Look at the UCLA study they mentioned. This is just incredible. They took immune cells in a petri dish and exposed them to different linguistic environments.
What did that even mean? They played recordings to the cells.
Essentially, yes. They simulated the chemical environment of the body under stress, which is created by negative language, versus the chemical environment of a body in a state of calm and affirmation. And they watched what the genes inside those cells did.
And what was the result?
The cells that were bathed in the negative language stress hormones started expressing higher levels of inflammatory genes. These are the genes linked to almost every chronic disease, heart disease, arthritis, you name it. But the cells in the positive, affirming environment showed decreased inflammation. Their antiviral response genes actually powered up. Your words are sending memos directly to your DNA.
That's a thought that will stop you in your tracks. My self-talk is literally telling my genes whether to turn on the sickness switch or the healing switch.
It is a direct command. And this is backed up by the field of psychoneuroimmunology, the Ohio State study, for example. They tracked people over a winter season and found that the participants who consistently used optimistic, self-affirming language had a much stronger immune response.
They got sick less often?
They got sick less often, and when they did, they reported milder symptoms. They even measured the antibodies in their saliva.
And what did they find there?
They found higher levels of something called immunoglobulin A. This is the antibody that's like the security guard for all your mucous membranes, your mouth, your nose. It's the first line of defense against incoming viruses. So the evidence is overwhelming. Your tongue is part architect, and it's also part pharmacist. Your immune system is listening to every word you say and adjusting its readiness based on the forecast you provide.
So knowing all this,
Yeah.
knowing the science, the next logical step has to be application. How do we take this mastery and apply it to the big areas of life?
Exactly. The source material breaks it down into those three key domains: your money, your health, and your relationships. Because that's where the rubber really meets the road.
Let's start with money. It's such a source of stress for so many people, and a lot of that seems to come from what the research calls the invisible script of scarcity.
It's invisible because we're often not even aware we're running it. It's a collection of these hand-me-down phrases we inherited from our family, from our culture.
Money doesn't grow on trees.
That's the classic one. Or, you have to work your fingers to the bone to get by. Or, rich people are greedy. These aren't just folksy sayings. They are linguistic viruses that program your brain to see money as a source of threat.
And when the brain detects a threat, we're back to cortisol.
Right back to cortisol. And what happens when your brain is flooded with cortisol? Your decision-making becomes very narrow, very short-term. You're not thinking about long-term investment strategy. You're thinking about immediate survival. This is what leads to things like panic selling stocks, or impulse spending for a quick dopamine hit, or just avoiding looking at your bank account altogether.
So the key is to use language that signals safety, to get the brain out of that threat mode and into problem-solving mode. How do we do that, practically speaking?
It's a shift from reporting lack to declaring agency. There's a subtle but powerful difference. So reporting lack sounds like this. Ugh, I only have $75 to last me till Friday. This is pathetic. I'm trapped.
I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling. What's the declaration of agency?
The declaration sounds like this. Okay, $75 is my current operating capital. I am a resourceful and capable manager of my funds, and I am open to receiving new income which is on its way to me.
The facts are the same. It's still $75. But the energy is completely different.
The whole frame has shifted. You've moved from being a victim of your circumstances to being the steward of your resources. You use words like stewardship, gratitude, and expectation. Those words signal safety to your nervous system. The cortisol drip stops, the dopamine starts, and your prefrontal cortex comes back online, ready to think strategically.
Marcus, the accountant, is a great case study for this. He wasn't trying to manifest money out of thin air. He was just changing the family script.
His whole family had this ritual before payday. They'd say, well, let's see if the miracle happens this month. It was a joke, but it was deeply ingrained. And it's a completely passive statement. It places all the power outside of himself.
The miracle might happen, or it might not. Not up to me.
Exactly. So he consciously replaced it. He started declaring, money flows to me on schedule, and I allocate it wisely. He shifted from passive hope to active stewardship. And he said the biggest change was that the emotional roller coaster around money just flattened out. The anxiety disappeared. And because he wasn't in that threat mode anymore, he started noticing opportunities, a small side gig, a way to cut an expense that were invisible to him before.
Okay, let's pivot to health. This idea of healing your body with your words feels, well, it can feel a bit out there to some people, but the evidence is pretty stunning.
It is, and the key concept here is reframing. It's about being incredibly intentional with the labels you apply. The chemotherapy example is so powerful.
Right. Same drug, same dose, but the language used to describe it had a huge impact.
A measurable impact. The group of patients who were coached to call their chemo liquid warriors, or my healing infusion, reported significantly milder side effects. Less nausea, less fatigue. The other group, who just kept calling it poison or this toxic stuff, had a much harder time.
Because their brains were preparing their bodies for an assault.
They were telling their bodies, you are being poisoned. And the body responded accordingly with all its defense mechanisms. The first group was telling their body, we are being helped by a powerful ally. And the body responded with more cooperation and less resistance.
And this applies to everyday aches and pains, too. The difference between naming pain and enthroning it.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Naming pain is just descriptive. I feel a sharp sensation in my knee when I go downstairs. That's just data. Enthroning pain is when you make it part of your identity. I have a bad knee,
Once it's my bad knee, it belongs to you. It's part of who you are.
and it's much harder to get rid of something that's part of your identity. The source recommends talking to the pain, not just about it. Treat it like a messenger, not a permanent resident. Okay, pain in my knee, thank you for the signal. I understand I need to be careful. You've delivered the message. You can go now.
That feels like a really subtle shift, but I can see how it would change the relationship with the sensation.
But I have to push back on this a little bit for the listener who's dealing with, serious chronic pain. If you're in agony and you try to say, my body is free and aligned, doesn't a part of your brain just scream, liar?
Mm.
How do you deal with that resistance?
That is the most important question, and the answer is crucial.
Yeah.
This is not about denial. It is not about pretending the pain doesn't exist. That creates internal conflict. The key is to focus on process and trajectory, not just the current state.
So you don't have to lie to yourself.
Never. The author tells her own story about a really bad lumbar disc herniation. She was in excruciating pain. She couldn't honestly say, I am healed and pain-free. Her nervous system would have rejected that instantly.
So what does she say instead?
She shifted the language. Instead of the thought, I'm crippled, which felt very true in the moment, she chose a process-oriented declaration. She would say, I am aligned and my body is learning how to move freely again.
Ah, learning. That's the key word. That's the key. It acknowledges the present reality, that it's a work in progress, while setting a clear, positive direction for the future. Her words became a partner to her physical therapy. She was commanding her body to cooperate with the healing process, and she says her recovery was much faster than her doctors predicted.
That's incredible. And that story about the veteran with phantom limb pain, that just takes it to another level.
It's a truly amazing case. This veteran had debilitating pain in a limb that wasn't even there. Nothing was working. So a creative doctor prescribed him poetry.
Poetry for pain.
He had the man write and recite poems that spoke directly to the missing limb. But he didn't talk about the pain. He talked about the limb being at rest, at peace, a part of his history that was now quiet. Brain scans showed that this linguistic process, this reframing, actually decreased the activity in the pain centers of his brain. He literally talked his brain out of creating the pain signal.
Wow. Okay, so finally, let's talk about relationships. This might be the arena where our words have the most immediate and visible impact.
Absolutely. And again, it comes right back to the chemistry. When you speak words of affirmation, appreciation, or gratitude to someone, you are literally giving their brain a shot of oxytocin.
The bonding hormone.
The bonding hormone. It creates trust, it creates connection, it makes people feel safe. But when you use words of criticism, contempt, or judgment, you give them a shot of cortisol. And that triggers their defense systems, it erodes empathy, and it breaks the connection. This leads us directly to the Gottman ratio.
This is from Dr. John Gottman's research on couples. He found he could predict divorce with incredible accuracy.
Over 90% accuracy. And one of the key metrics was this ratio. He found that for a relationship to be stable and happy, the positive interactions have to outnumber the negative ones by a ratio of at least 5-to-1.
5-to-1, that seems high.
It seems high, but it's what's required to counteract the powerful lingering effects of that one shot of cortisol. One critical comment can wipe out the goodwill of 4 positive ones, so you have to be incredibly deliberate with your language to maintain that healthy balance.
And a big part of that is learning how to reframe criticism.
It's everything. The default for criticism is judgment, which attacks the other person's character or competence. Why would you do it that way? That's so inefficient. That kind of language puts the other person's brain immediately into a threat state. The amygdala fires, and they can't even hear you anymore. They're just defending themselves.
Let's just shift.
The shift is from judgment to curiosity. Instead of attacking, you inquire, hey, I'm curious about your process here. Can you walk me through why you chose to approach it this way?
It's the same core issue, but the first one is an accusation and the second one is an invitation.
It's a perfect way to put it. An invitation keeps the other person's brain open and receptive. It makes them a partner in solving the problem, not the problem itself. And to build on that, you need what the source calls the language of intimacy, these tiny micro-affirmations that build a buffer of safety over time.
Can you give some examples of those?
Sure. It can be as simple as a concluding signal after someone shares something vulnerable. Instead of just moving on, you pause and say, thank you for trusting me with that.
Acknowledging the act of sharing itself.
Exactly. Or using reflections like, so what I'm hearing you say is that you felt really dismissed in that meeting, is that right? It shows you're not just hearing the words, you're trying to understand the feeling behind them. These small linguistic acts create a sanctuary. They make the relationship a safe space to be vulnerable, which is the foundation of true intimacy.
Okay, so this is all incredibly powerful. But understanding it is one thing. Doing it, especially when you're stressed or tired, is another. How do we move into mastery and, more importantly, maintenance?
This is the crucial final piece. It starts with a very practical technique for breaking the old habit. It's called the pause and pivot.
And this relies on catching yourself in what the book calls the 3-second window.
Exactly. It's that tiny little gap between the negative thought popping into your head and the words actually coming out of your mouth. That's your moment of power. That's your chance to intervene.
It sounds like it requires a lot of mindfulness.
It does. The technique itself is very physical. The moment you catch yourself about to say something like, this is never going to work, you have to execute a full stop. You literally pause. You take a deep breath, and then you deliberately pivot your language.
So you'd say,
You'd say, let me rephrase that. I'm still learning how to master this, so I will focus on the very next step. In that 4-second action, you've just stopped the cortisol flood and created a small, new neural pathway. You've chosen the paved road instead of the rut.
and doing that over and over again is what builds what the source calls confidence as architecture. It's not a feeling, it's a structure.
Confidence isn't something you have, it's something you build. Sentence by brave sentence. It's the cumulative effect of all those small pivots. And there's a core practice they recommend to accelerate this process: the mirror work ritual.
This is where you actually stand in front of a mirror and say your declarations out loud. Why is the mirror so important?
Because your own reflection is your toughest critic and your most powerful ally. When you can look yourself directly in the eye and say, I am worthy of success and happiness, and not flinch, you are training your nervous system to handle the intensity of your own power. You're teaching your amygdala that your own declarative voice is a source of safety, not a source of judgment.
And what about in the moment? If you make a mistake in a presentation, for example, is there a quicker tool?
Yes, there's the 4-second reset. This is a silent internal tool. After you slip up, instead of letting your inner critic go wild, you take one slow, deep breath count of 4 in, count of 4 out, and you silently repeat a mantra like, I am composed, I continue. It's a circuit breaker that stops the shame spiral and brings your executive function right back online.
Okay, so we have the technique to change the habit. Now let's talk about creating the new language. How do we create a personal declaration system that actually works?
The number one rule is specificity. This is non-negotiable. Vague affirmations like, everything will be okay, are basically useless. Your brain just dismisses them as fluff.
Like spam email for the brain.
Exactly. It gets filtered out. You need precision engineering. If you want to be more productive, your declaration can't just be, I am productive. It has to be something concrete, like, I am a writer who completes 200 focused words every morning before I check my email.
It's a specific, measurable action.
It's a blueprint. It's clear, it's simple, and it has an emotional charge. Your brain can grab onto that and say, okay, I know what to do.
The sources also talk about using rhythm and rhyme. Why does that help?
Because it makes the new thought sticky. Our brains are wired to remember patterns, melodies, and rhymes. It's an ancient memory tool. For the client who was a chronic procrastinator, the affirmation, write at 8, liberate, was 1,000 times more effective than, I will start my writing promptly at 8 a.m.
Because it's got a hook. It's memorable.
It bypasses the analytical mind and lodges itself in the more emotional limbic part of the brain. And all of this leads to the practice of speaking as if.
This is where you start talking about your future goals as if they're already happening.
You're verbally rehearsing your future reality. For example, if you're planning a trip for next year, you might say to a friend, when I'm flying in from my new city for that conference, we should definitely meet up. You're speaking it into existence. You're allowing your present-day self to get comfortable wearing the identity of the person who lives in that new city. Your subconscious hears it and starts working behind the scenes to align reality with your declaration.
Which brings us to maintenance. Because momentum is great, but consistency is the real goal.
Momentum is a sprinter. Maintenance is the marathoner. The ultimate goal isn't just to make a change, it's to achieve automaticity. That's where the new, empowering language becomes the new, deeper rut. It becomes the default path of least resistance.
And what are the best tools for that long-term maintenance?
2 key things. First is habit stacking. You hitch your new linguistic habit to an existing unbreakable one. You say your declarations while you brush your teeth. Or you use your morning coffee as the trigger for your gratitude practice. You don't have to find new time, you just link the habits.
And the second one.
Social accountability. This is where you enlist one or two trusted allies. You give them permission to gently call you out when you slip into an old negative pattern. It has to be someone who can do it without judgment, just a gentle reminder. Hey, that sounded like the old script.
And the ultimate goal of all this, beyond just our own lives, is to pass it on, to teach this to others.
And the first rule of teaching is always modeling. You have to be the living embodiment of the language you want to spread. But beyond that, you can use a technique called narrating success aloud.
So instead of just saying good job to a kid or an employee,
You get specific. You narrate the process that led to the success. Wow, the way you stayed focused on that one problem until you solved it. That kind of persistence is what makes you so capable. You are giving them the vocabulary of their own competence. You're helping them build their own positive architecture from the outside in.
it all comes down to this final shift in identity. Living as the author of your story.
That's the ultimate role. It's the shift from being a passive character in a story that's happening to you to picking up the pen and becoming the active author, deciding what happens next. You use your words to foreshadow your own victories.
So to synthesize all this, intentional language isn't about pretending problems don't exist. It's not about ignoring reality.
Not at all. It's about consciously choosing how you interpret and frame that reality. It's about tilting the playing field in your own favor by deliberately selecting the language you use to describe your life, your challenges, and your potential.
Okay, we have covered a huge amount of ground today. Let's try to boil it down to the absolute must-remember takeaways for everyone listening.
I think it comes down to three core insights. First, your words are not just sounds. They are biological commands that are actively changing your chemistry every second of every day. You are choosing cortisol or you are choosing dopamine with every sentence.
Second, self-sabotage is a master of disguise. It hides as realism, as humor, as modesty. It requires active, constant vigilance. And that pause and pivot is your single most powerful tool.
And finally, confidence is not a feeling you wait for. It is a linguistic architecture. It is a structure you build day by day using specific present tense declarations.
So we want to leave you with an immediate practical challenge, a way to put this to work right now. Your first step is simply to identify one sentence.
Just one.
One limiting habitual sentence that you know you use. Maybe it's, I'm always so disorganized. Maybe it's, I can never catch a break. Whatever it is for you, just become aware of it.
And then your challenge is to consciously replace it. Create a brave, specific new declaration. Not, I will be organized, but I prioritize and execute my tasks with focused intention. And just commit to saying that new sentence out loud to yourself once tomorrow morning, just once. And then pay attention. See what your biology and maybe even the universe starts to arrange in response to your new command.
It leaves us with a final thought to mull over. If every single sentence you speak is another drop of ink on the invisible biography of your life, what genre are you writing?
Is it a tragedy? A story of self-sabotage written in the passive voice? Or is it an epic? A story of overcoming challenges filled with declarations of courage, of agency, of deliberate creation? The beautiful and maybe terrifying truth is that the quality of your finished story depends entirely on the words you choose to write with today.